Hey folks, Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver. You can find all my stuff at dailyevolver.com. Just quick introduction here. The episode is pretty self-explanatory. It's me and my old integral political pals, Diane Musho Hamilton and Terry Patten, processing this election and what might be in store for us. We start with Terry reminiscing about the three of us 4 years ago when we gathered at my place for the Hillary Clinton's the First Woman President party. We did a podcast the next day to process our feelings. So we're back, only we have a new set of feelings and happy to share them with you. Thanks for listening.
I listened to half of our thing from 4 years ago.
Oh, really?
Did you really?
Good for you.
How'd we do?
Yeah. I think we did pretty well. I'm going to probably get back to it and listen to the last half of it after this, just to, God, that was the beginning of a lot of grief, wasn't it?
Well, I just remember feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My biggest memory is the sensation I felt.
Really?
In my body, yeah. When I woke up and heard that news. And in fact, when the polls were so off the other night and Trump was ahead, in a lot of the battleground states early on, I thought, oh my God, are we going to go through this again? Like I literally just turned off the TV, decided I was only going to check my phone and I was going to go regulate.
Yeah.
So I just basically lied down, had my phone there every couple hours. I'd give it a look, and it was really something that when he won,
I mean, again, the polling. Right?
Well, I think this has been, it's been quite a blow to so many of us who were believing the polls and we were hoping for a blue tsunami and
we were hoping for a repudiation of the situation. We didn't get it.
I did my live show yesterday, and said what I had planned was to open with a eloquent discourse on how the United States of America had spat out Donald Trump, and not so much, the polls were wrong. Definitely the spin and hype from the mainstream media.
Well, what it means is that there are an awful lot of people who don't find that authoritarianism revolting. They find it attractive.
Yeah.
Well, we have to be careful though, because I think the frame matters in the sense that the narrative that they're getting every day isn't talking about that at all. It's talking about all the things that he's tried to do and how much he has been thwarted by the news media and by the left. Like, I think we can't even talk about this election or Trump without talking about Fox News at the same time.
And Facebook,
Because if you listen to what they're saying, it's not even framed in the way we frame it. He's a victim.
I don't know, honestly. I've watched a good bit of Fox News. Clearly, I think you're totally right if you're talking about Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham. Yeah,
that is who I'm talking about. I'm talking about those
fair
guys.
enough. That's fine. But through the day, and actually Fox and Friends itself, they spin it Trump's way, but not egregiously. And I would argue, to me, not as egregiously as MSNBC does the other side, where you hear virtually nobody arguing on behalf of Trump.
Well, that's interesting because I listened to Fox the morning after the election just to hear how they were spinning it. And that's what I experienced. I experienced that they were focused on grievance. They were focused on the vote being fraudulent. They were focused on the lawsuits. Like everything was about how he wasn't being treated fairly. And that's what I hear so much, is that we never gave him a chance. We never accepted the election. We've screwed, the Russian investigation, the impeachment process were all attempts at, so, and then they also, I hear them say things like, he's done a good job. He hasn't been given a chance. It isn't his fault that COVID came here. It was the Chinese. That, for whatever reason, that's what kind of is in my mind about how they understand this. Not that they're willing to vote for a despot.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. And I actually agree with you. But here's what I guess I'd say about that. I think there's a huge piece of the truth to that. And that until we have a integration of that,
Yeah.
we're going to continue to have the culture war. And I expect we're going to continue to have the culture war. I don't think this is the end of it by any means, whether Trump stays in the White House or not.
What do you think, Terry? You're
Yeah,
reasonable
Terry,
about all this.
yeah, you be reasonable, will you please?
Well, for me, the last few days have been a moment of reckoning because I believed the polls. The fact that we are incapable of getting accurate polling information, no matter how hard really smart people try, and credible institutions put all kinds of money and muscle into the effort, we were consistently misinformed about where people were at. And what that means is,
and in a particular direction.
There were a whole lot of people who supported Trump who weren't going to bother to spend any of their time offering their opinions. And there was a skew in which more, certainly people on the left were too busy too, but very, very consistently in every different location, there were, whatever it is, 4 or 5% distortion in the polls because fewer people were willing to participate in them who were Trump voters. And there really were bunches of more non-college educated, white, mostly men, who had not voted in 2016, who got recruited and were turned out, and who enthusiastically participated. And that's the country we live in. And I'm still absorbing that. I'm like, and that's bad news to me. And I'm taking that in.
It is bad news. Can I say one tiny thing though?
Yeah.
It is rare for an incumbent to lose, right? Yeah. You have to perform badly. Something has to have gone really wrong, like it did for George H. Bush and for Jimmy Carter, right? So if something did go wrong, and was it just COVID, guys? Would he be in office right now already if it weren't for COVID?
I think so.
Most likely.
I think COVID, to whatever degree it played, and I think it played against Trump. So, I think without COVID, Trump would have sailed to re-election based on what we're seeing now.
That's a pretty horrifyingly sober.
Even though he was
reality.
impeached, even though every one of his cronies has been busted and jailed.
Yeah.
Even though anybody who's halfway paying attention can see that he's a lying, cheating, corrupt, he's corrupted our institutions. So we're in an existential threat moment. The ecological predicament is only intensifying. California was on fire just a couple of months ago for a full month, smoke-wise.
Yeah.
So the narratives of our doom-oriented friends are, you apply Occam's razor and you got to kind of hand it to them. Like we're not going to turn things around anywhere close to the speed that's necessary. I find that sort of discouraging. And yet more and more the prospect of our collective mortality is drawing from me and so many other people a sense of the utter sacred, miraculous beauty of the present moment and of every present moment. And so it's sort of drawing me into a humble, how can I both celebrate and worship and serve this amazing life we share for however long.
Right on. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I have just some thoughts I'd share on kind of what's on the table here. I think what we've seen in terms of the misreading of the polls is indicative of what I've come to see as mean orange. And it is this rational to the exclusion of non-rational worldview and thinking. Modern and rational assume that they don't get the animal spirits. I mean, this is actually proof that they don't get this other dimension of reality that is ever changing and morphing and unable to be gotten to by statistics and rational thinking. And
because it's not entirely material.
exactly.
Can't be measured.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's community in it too. I mean, one of the things that others are pointing out to me about unfortunately, we all have our relatives who've gotten sucked into some kind of conspiracy theory or other. And I've got my QAnon friend who
Do you have a QAnon friend? I don't have a QAnon friend.
They have community. And the people who are coming together around Trump are getting more community than people are on the left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you've seen these, there's a couple that I'm trying to think of these cool young journalists, YouTube journalists that really have basically an integral sensibility, but they go into these Trump rallies and just listen to people and put it together in a really nice way. The energy at a Trump rally, the loosh, Terry, that liquid space between us is rich, and particularly to people who are traditional people love that. They're communal. You know, we all leave home, us modernists, and go live in our suburbs where we don't know our neighbors, but not them. And there is something that's rich. And I noticed it when I was in South Dakota. And this is what I'm talking about. Until we liberals get that, and actually to our benefit, because we will re-embrace it ourselves and re-find it. But until we do, the new integration, or as we do, because I think we're doing it. This is another, hit upside the head. As we do it, we will, move into integral.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I also would say, I guess I would add to what you're saying, that there is, rather than policy, it does seem to be identity fueled, and it does seem to come down to a very powerful us against them, and this kind of marching anthem of the Trump rallies of, did you guys see that, like, make liberals cry again? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
I think that there's literally that guy that got elected to the Congress, the youngest person who's ever been elected to Congress, who told AOC that he was there to personally see that people like her, basically were destroyed. I don't know what he said exactly, but just the sense that in a way it's quite, and there is a part of me that I know how easy it is to hate on people. That's like, I feel like that's an easy choice.
Well, it's easy to hate on people that want to make you cry.
Well, but it's like, so I mean, my daughter was saying the other day that she really feels and believes that the left, and I'm not quite sure who she means, because it's also unfortunate for the left, because there are actually a lot of subcategories, and we're not so many. We're diversified. We are not like, it isn't a one note situation. It's a big tent, and people are very different, and we have different sensibilities around things. So it's really hard to clump us together. I mean, the fact that there are always these, the Bernie voters and the other voters, and we're trying to come together, but in fact, there are grave differences between us. But anyway, she said that she felt that, that the elites, the liberal elite or whatever, has been, putting down these more non-college educated white voters. And I said to her, okay, I want to know who they are, because the fact of the matter is, I am not going to say these people are victims, because of course that's the thing we think everyone is when we're liberals. Everyone's victimized. They're not victims. They have a worldview. And I am not going to take responsibility for the fact that they are comfortable with a person who, from where I'm standing, looks like a sociopath. Like, I mean, I just can't take responsibility for that choice. I'm hearing it's my responsibility that they've come together to align against us and to follow Trump. And I'm like, I don't know who the people are that they feel put down by, but I don't see that in my world. You guys aren't doing that. I don't sit around at kitchen tables with you guys and talk about those awful non-college, white voters.
I do. and have.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. Yes, I have. And so does the culture, Di.
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
It does.
Okay,
We have won the culture war in that the only people it's okay to make fun of are hicks, religious people, fanatics, small-time business people, and the insult that we give them is we're blind to it. And
okay,
and I'll give you an example. I actually have one that I just worked with at a show. I'll give you an.
Okay, give some examples because I'm gonna actually argue this.
Sam Harris makes this point. He said he's finally been able to understand the Trump phenomenon, and what it is that Trump never subtly or implicitly ever gives you the feeling that he feels that there's something wrong with you morally or in terms of your intelligence. And it is the sense that people are being critiqued for their intelligence and their moral standing. That's what they're hating on. They're hating on us because we're attempting to be smarter and better people. And to whatever degree we're succeeding, we're seeing them not even trying, and we're feeling morally superior, and we're feeling smarter. And whether that's said overtly or whether it's implicit,
I don't see that in my world. Where I see it is when it comes to politics and elections, because everybody gets into a very inflated power struggle and hates on the other side. If you set politics aside, I just simply don't see it in my life. I don't see people doing that in an ongoing way.
Actually, the example I was going to use is the one you brought up, Terry, and that's Sam Harris. And he did this podcast on the eve of the election where, it's kind of a special thing. It was not that long, just him talking about, I finally got it. I finally figured out why people like Trump. And it's been a mystery to me. And here's what he came up with. Trump, and this is him, I'm quoting him. Trump offers what no priest can credibly offer, a total expiation of shame. His personal shamelessness is a kind of spiritual balm. Trump is fat Jesus. He's grabbed them by the pussy Jesus. He's I'll eat cheeseburgers if I want to Jesus. He's punched them in the face Jesus. I think that is shockingly mean-spirited and condescending. I do. I'm a Sam Harris fan.
So you feel like, in a way, I think what I'm hearing is there's like a funny paradox in it. He's got why they like Trump so much, and at the same time, he's doing the very thing that makes them like Trump.
Well, yes, and I think what he gets, and this is what liberals get about traditionalists, they get mean traditionalism. There's everything he said about Trump lovers is true. In that, they're ethnocentric and they have traditional stereotypes and the sexist and all of that stuff. But it has no understanding or appreciation of good traditionalism.
Well, I don't think Trump's a traditionalist. I think Pence is. I think Trump is a gangster.
No, I think Trump is red. Trump is pre-traditional.
Yes.
I would agree with that, actually. But he's talking about why people love Trump.
I think there's insight in his point.
I do too.
And he embodies the same scorn. How many people like you, Jeff, grew up in a small town in some red area and were super bright and found their way to a good school and wound up somewhere on the coast or in Boulder or whatever and didn't look back and were glad to get away from what seemed to them their comparatively dull siblings or towns, neighbors or other family members. And that phenomenon has left a lot of people feeling dissed and demoted. And Trump is telling them, I'm your champion. And he talks in these terms that anybody can understand, visceral, emotional language. So he's been able to mobilize it. But, is there another great figure in politics that...
The people in my small town are not thinking about me and the fact I moved away. They're just not.
Okay.
They're just not. I mean, it's like we run into each other and we might be glad to see each other and talk for a few minutes, and they see that I left and whatever, but I don't feel like I'm engaged in some sort of sense. They're not okay, and they're not really engaged in that I'm not either.
Well,
like
that's
I
because
think
you're enlightened, Diane. I mean, that's different.
Somebody called me, honest to God, a Brit called me a hillbilly the other day. I said, I'm not a hillbilly. I'm not from Appalachia. Thank you very much. I'm a redneck. Leave me alone. It may be that I'm just really still close to my people, so we're close. Right. Anyway, I just think, yes.
I would just say to Sam Harris that
yes.
I have traditional friends and family who have a whole different Jesus that they follow, and they don't, yes, they're not interested in globalism. They're not interested in multiculturalism. They want to be left alone. But to be characterized as he did, we think Trump's insulting?
Yeah, that was pretty insulting.
Yeah.
But you guys, aren't we in a little bit, I mean, I feel sometimes lucky to have the cultural evolutionary developmental framework that I learned from Ken. Totally. In the sense that I can look at Trump supporters and see that they are the preserving function, and that the progressives are the innovative function. Yes. And that there's just a lot of tension, and because of social media and because of the internet and because we have no shared ways to commune because everybody's left the church, a lot of what's going on is that we've found that the media supports the polarization, and we don't have a lot of mitigating ways to mitigate that preserving, innovating tension. And so We're really going apart. I mean, if I were queen for a day, I would institute mandatory civil service for the last year of high school. Every 17, 18-year-old in the country would spend 18 months in a civil service project in which they learned about the importance of unity and diversity, and they understood how to belong, and they also understood how to differentiate, and that they understood differentiating is a healthy thing, and it's okay that we're not the same, and that we don't like the same music, and that we didn't all go to college, and it doesn't matter that, there's intrinsic value in every worldview.
You'd get to know a bunch of people very different from yourself.
I just feel that those things that created community, because we're so diverse, because the church has collapsed, it's not surprising in a way that amber is degraded to red under Trump, and that we're getting kind of orange to green is being subsumed by Bernie and AOC. I mean, that's the cutting edge. And I have to say, that's not where my sensibility is. I do find, I listen to AOC and Bernie very carefully, and what I hear is constant negativity, and I hear the same kind of grievance that I was talking about at the beginning of the call. I can't get behind them because they never throw a positive bone anywhere.
Well, Diane, it may be that these particular election results are going to grant your wish, because the only way forward for the Democratic Party is going to be more moderate, because this was a repudiation. Can you imagine if we'd gone into this election with Bernie at the top of the ticket? This was a validation for moderation.
People are polling against
rightly or wrongly, and that's how it's going to play.
But it seems like a red-green conflict to me, more than even an amber-orange conflict.
Well, I think that I did a podcast on this about psychopaths are people too.
I wanted to listen to that. Damn it!
And I was set off by this article.
That's such a great title.
Well, the point I make is that as we expand our circle of moral compassion, there's a new circle that wants to be included, and that is people with empathy disorders. And I was triggered in the positive way, by the column in the New York Times on Sunday every week called Modern Love, where
I read that
a reader writes in about their love life. And it's a famous column, of course, and coveted. And this woman wrote, he married a sociopath, me. And she talked about her life as a sociopath, and that she was diagnosed. And she talked about a couple of things she did, like she embezzled the money they used for their honeymoon. Her hobby was to hang out in strangers' homes while they were there without them knowing it. And that over time, she has learned to become empathetic in ways that she's just not naturally wired. And that there are people with this. And so I used her as an example, and then Trump, because Trump is, he would be the psychopath. Sociopaths are people who are disordered and can't function in society, and they're often the criminal element. Psychopaths skate this side of the law, and they're often charming, and they're often successful, but they see other people as it's, not thous. So they don't have a, so everything's in it. But there are treatments for these people. You could diagnose it in children and work with them. And so with that in mind, I try to make peace with Trump as a psychopath. I see him as on a spectrum disorder.
I've been
literally.
calling him a sociopath, so it's interesting that we're
Yeah,
both.
I have too. I hadn't gotten the distinction till I read this article.
Uh-huh.
By the way, this woman is now a doctor of psychology working with people with empathy disorders.
These are the particular disorders that characterize people who do mass shootings.
Yeah.
It's not schizophrenics. It's not even people on a manic tear with a bipolar disorder.
Right.
It's sociopaths, psychopathic sociopaths
Yeah.
that will do that. So the idea that we shouldn't judge it, I don't know, it can function pretty destructively.
Well, of course, I'm not saying you don't judge it.
The autistic people who maybe can't feel.
As Willie said to me,
act
dear,
out.
he said, "I love you, Mommy. I just don't like your behaviors."
Oh my.
That's what Jeff is arguing for, that we love the sociopath
exactly.
even as we draw limits.
Yes, yes. We do judge, but we don't condemn.
That's right.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, fair enough.
Aren't we really dealing with two fundamental ugly things? I've sort of identified that what I'm for is repentance and forgiveness, and what I'm against is psychopathy and cynicism. And we're at a time now in which the errors of green co-opted by red, the fake news dynamic is becoming overwhelming. It is like a kind of collective mind that is inflamed now, going mad.
It needs meditation.
Yeah. When the election was approaching, and I was in my happy bubble mind of blue tsunami and a dominant Senate, I was thinking about what would be the most important reforms that the Biden administration ought to be prioritizing. And it seemed to me that a profound, there'd have to be a commission appointed and detailed research and a report and so forth, but then legislation on the basis of it that would take apart the Facebook Fox ecosystem that is the breeding ground for this collective madness. We as a society can no longer make intelligent collective decisions. In fact, we're making such stupid collective decisions. Our divisions, our grudge matches against one another are more important to us than our mutual survival, the well-being of our own kids and grandkids. We're clearly in a self-destructive spiral. How do we emerge from it? It's probably got to do with a combination of that kind of reform of the algorithms that sort people into their preference bubbles and inflame their, extreme views. And of course, the money and politics issues. There'd have to be reforms around public financing of election. And
training in civics, and training in being a citizen, and training in getting along with people who aren't like you. We don't train people how to be a citizen anymore. There's absolutely no place where people come together and are trained literally in what it means to participate in this democracy. There's no training. So everybody's out on their own.
And that's why this year of public service that you referred to earlier, I'd rather have it after high school.
I mean, we're getting trained in embodiment. We're getting trained in, all of our, science, engineering, physics, and we don't train people in how to participate in the democracy and what it means and the challenges. Like nobody from, as I said, it used to be that, at least the draft demanded something of people. Nothing is demanded of anyone.
Yeah.
I just think it's super problematic. And as I said, when we weren't as diverse and when religion was the thing that cohered people, then this kind of civic, education was kind of supplemental. But the church isn't what holds people together anymore.
Yeah.
I just did a conversation with Tom Steiniger, and it's on my YouTube channel, where I posed the question to him: What does Germany have to teach the Americans about reconciling ourselves to a destructive past? And it was very thoughtful. He was very thoughtful about
What did he say?
Well, basically, he said it's just simply being willing to be present to the pain and to the destruction, and to allow yourself to be humbled by it. It wasn't morbid. It wasn't unbearable. It was just simply, but I think that takes a lot of emotional maturity.
Requires maturity.
Yeah.
And a certain complexity because that's a lot to take on, and people can't do it, and they feel, as you were saying earlier, they feel scolded and reprimanded, and that they're wrong and they're racist, and that's tricky. I mean, how do you advocate for social and racial
So
justice?
Jeff, tell us the bedtime story about how evolution is working just the way it's supposed to, and it's going to take us through this, and we're not really going to come unraveled.
Well, of course we're going to become unraveled. I mean, that becoming unraveled is the story of human history, and so we're very tuned into the unraveling, because we can feel that palpably. What's often missed is the raveling. So I think that there is a life to this struggle that it's like you said a minute ago, Diane. There's the people who are into the preservation. There are people who are into the innovation. There's supposed to be a tension there. Mm-hmm. They're actually they're probably supposed to hate each other, actually. In the sense that that's reality at this stage. I think we'll get beyond that. But we're going to get beyond that. We liberals are going to get beyond that by not bringing back, I hate the idea of bringing back anything, moving forward, but reintegrating the people that we thought we could leave behind.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
See, I do remember feeling like these conversations are dumber and less interesting, and I want to have these other conversations with the cool kids. And so in that gravitating toward what was more developed, what was more spiritually fragrant, what was just more intelligent in my view, I was implicitly rejecting those who were less interesting, less developed. And it was a very important part of my own freedom that I could choose a different psychic neighborhood that had more attractive qualities, and the whole integral cultural expression is one of the many expressions of this kind of emergence of capacity. We want to be with the other smart, cool kids who can have the conversations that actually go below the surface of things. And we don't want to only be embedded in the local and the quotidian.
Yeah.
Is that pathological? It certainly has stimulated a backlash that now has been weaponized by this particular sociopathic psychopath in a way that may be self-terminating to the whole American experiment.
Oh, well.
We don't know.
Maybe. But yes, I was with you to the last sentence, Terry. So, all good.
We're telling this story about the scorn or the judgment because we're trying to explain something that doesn't make sense to us, and that's
but I'm just
theory.
But
so if that's not true to your experience, is there an alternate explanation for what it's attempting to make sense of?
Well, yeah. I mean, I like my story better because it isn't about us doing anything to each other. It's about that they have a preserving function that for whatever reason, as we talk about, we don't know why people change. And we're always talking about, when it comes to human development, that different worlds are not better and not worse. They simply have constituent sets of qualities, and you may find more freedom than you felt earlier, but they find more security, let's say, perhaps. So the fact that they're a preserving function, whereas we're pushing towards change and kind of feed on change in a way to our own detriment. We don't even know anybody that we, hung out with 12 years ago. We don't even know where they are, So I think for me, maybe it's just my relationship to the whole thing is less personal, because I still have good personal relationships with my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
It never occurred to me that we were thinking ill of each other.
Yeah. Well, again, Di, I mean, you're enlightened.
Except for
that's true.
Wait, hold it. I forgot about my brother.
Well.
Yeah, I thought you weren't talking to your brother. Right?
I'm not.
Your older brother.
But it's his fault.
But I know so many people who aren't talking to their brother or their son or their nephew.
I mean, these two themes can coexist, and I can find a way. I mean, we all teach shadow. I can find a way to pick up what you're talking about, but it isn't naturally in my mind around what it is that's happening. Like this whole sense that somehow rural people have a sense that they're being screwed over. I don't have that experience of them. Mm-hmm. I'm in Utah. I'm surrounded by rural people. They're in their own world, and their own world feels like the world in the same way ours feels like the world. They're literally not referencing us right now the way we are them. Except right now they are, because they hate us.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know.
But how did it happen? When did it happen? I thought we were all friends.
All of these years we could have been friends. What Betty Davis said to Joan Crawford.
All of these years, in some sense, we kind of have been friends.
Well, and we have to be friends. I mean, it's absurd.
Well, that's the thing.
We're going to have a civil war. What are we going to do? Divide the country down the middle? I mean, what are we going to do?
Well, together we won 2 world wars and a Cold War and accomplished all kinds of things. And now at each other's throats, we're just swirling down, toward the drain. Mm-hmm. So clearly it's in our best interest to find a way to join forces.
So this project, I think here's Jeff's bedtime story of the project of really getting together is super hard. We just tend to gravitate. We tend to be tribal.
Yes. Well, we tend to fight.
And we tend to fight.
And look at evolution down through every stage. It's a struggle. But it's also, that's half of it. The other half is that it's love. We fight and we love our way forward.
I always loved the story of General Grant and General Lee at Appomattox.
What's that?
Well, Lee was a very dignified gentleman and had a lot of standing, and Grant was a little bit more down and dirty and super practical. But when you listen to him in his biography, he was principled and straightforward. He knew what his job was, but he didn't like it and he didn't dramatize it. And in the victory, I mean, when they met to sign whatever they signed at Appomattox, Grant had absolutely no interest whatsoever. He admired Lee,
Yeah, exactly. They were nice to each other.
He let all the Southern soldiers have their horses.
Mm-hmm.
He just let them take their horses home.
Yeah.
Go home on their horses, which, a lot of generals would gloat and rape and pillage and deprive. But he was just like, everybody go home,
Yeah. Well, to get to your point about service, I do think that in general, the culture and I think art leads the way, and politics and economics are sort of the lagging moves of a culture, that we're really moving into a green, particularly economy, where, there's 2 things. One is the requirement of service, that thing where you have to actually put skin in the game, is really important as we move into a communal mean of green. And also some sort of a guaranteed income or some sort of a reasonable baseline of economic security where, the example I always use is people who work 40 hours a week for minimum wage can have a 2-bedroom apartment. Just that, and just move into that more egalitarian, also more sensitivity in terms of race and these karmas of history and the way people are privileged. that's all. I think that's happening. That's the raveling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looks like unraveling in a way,
That's
but it's actually the
story.
raveling. Yes, that's a bedtime story.
Well, it's
And
the things that are coming together
good night.
very quietly in the background, while other things are falling
Yes.
apart very loudly in the foreground.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Dogs bark, but the caravan moves on. You know, and so it is with humanity.
Yeah.
Well, we're in a little bit of a different moment. I mean, I've just, I've had that weird morning where I looked up and the sky was red, and the month in which there was smoke in the air most every day, at least to some degree. There are these guys who talk about the methane hydrates being released because of global warming, creating the positive feedback loops, and we're going to have runaway global warming. And I don't know, they're wrong. I don't know for sure that that's not already happening. Mm-hmm. So there's a kind of horrified recognition. We are not going to come together in time to do the things that are necessary for the ecological predicament, global warming. And it's going to get a lot worse. Clearly, Mitch McConnell's not going to help strike a grand bargain over the Green New Deal. We're not going to take sudden dramatic action at the scale that's seemingly necessary. So being in the, what is this? There have always been disasters. Lots of people may die. There may be contractions. There may be some social dislocation. Something may persist, but we're also somehow kind of having to be with each other in a weird interlude, aren't we? Isn't this a during the years that we first got to know one another, our lives were held within the fundamental well-being and prosperity of the middle class expanding economy culture. And it really, we were thinking about long-term unsustainabilities as kind of theoretical problems. It wasn't impinging on our lives yet. And now it's begun to. And it isn't as though this is mobilizing people to take action and based on any kind of coherent understanding or theory about how to meet the moment. So we can kind of push our chairs back and be philosophical. Maybe that's the best we can do. We can love all existence while we're here to love it. There is something to grieve here. And somehow I'm a more whole person if I don't look away from it, if I let myself be with the, whatever it is, the species who will be extincted, or the children who, the various traumas that will ripple through the human and non-human world that are intensifying because of things we're looking at right now. Somehow I want our blessing, well-being, magnifying to include all that. I don't want to step over it.
Right on. Yeah. Beautiful.
I mean, a lot of what you describe is due to the success of human beings on the planet. So it's completely interrelated. I mean, from the perspective of our personal story, the grief is real and the uncertainty and the foreboding. But from a little higher perspective, our success and our demise are just simply one thing. Mm-hmm. They're completely interrelated. If we hadn't been so biologically successful, we wouldn't have depleted the planet.
And we're living in the moment when that flower is both blossoming most spectacularly and showing the beginnings of wilting.
I think I love what you said, Terry, about you feel like a more whole person when you include this. That's a really important, to me, marker of how I want to see and feel the world. Does it make me a bigger person to see this? And unquestionably, yes. And the tragic, part of it is, it expands into just the tragic nature of life itself. I mean, and changing climates over millennia and whatever, and just species dyings and comings and just the whole cauldron of life that I want to,
of life and death.
Yeah, life and death. Yes, that I want to get friendly to, and at the same time, let the suffering in, and
which leads us right back to the problem with Trump voters.
Those darn Trump voters.
Isn't that how we started this conversation?
They don't want OSHA to improve the way we do things in the slaughterhouses. Those
they're not helping with climate
well, I'll
change.
tell you what they are is they're not buying the story that that
we're bad.
Modernists and liberals are.
Yes.
And part of I'm sympathetic because again, just with the polls, it's like maybe they know something we don't. Maybe statistics aren't as reliable. Maybe there's these projections that people make. You tell your apocalypse story if you want. I got my own.
Yeah.
I don't want you pushing your apocalypse story on me. I got my own.
So I think we have to reckon at some new level with our Trump-supporting neighbors and cousins. And we have one, a dear friend of ours who we respect tremendously, who's acutely tuning in to the conservative truths and the left errors, and even living in Texas for a while here to re-emphasize it. And you've been in conversation with him. What are you opening up to that's shifting your view? What can we constructively learn? How can we be related to these people that we seem to be in a death struggle with, that some new light is being shined?
The big motivator is what he sees as a dark force in Mean Green. Mm-hmm. And he really sees that as the threat beyond Trump, and that Trump is the only person who will stand athwart that and will fight back against that. And so that's the animating energetic, and that actually is the animating principle of a lot of intellectual conservatives. They're just, again, it's what I argued Sam Harris did. He saw the mean part of traditionalism, but not the good part. They see the mean part of green, but not the good part. Mm-hmm. Now, most of them are adequately green in the sense that they're, civil rights and world-centric and so forth. But they have such allergies to multiculturalism, especially as it's forcibly enforced. Mean Green deserves to be condemned. It's totalitarian. Every stage has a totalitarian aspect.
I recently,
but that's not the only story, and for them it is.
I have a role in an organization that required me to take a diversity training thing in a can that I do online. It requires a couple of hours. And it was so rigid, and it was so full of these world-centric shoulds
and dogma,
yeah.
Ideology.
Catechism.
So the male manager bumps into the new hire woman in the Java hut next to the building and says, "Gosh, you look great in that dress." Never say that. Like they're training you what to not do and what to do.
Well, but why did Cal Cunningham have to send that dumb text?
Who's this?
We needed him in the
Cal
Senate.
Cunningham, yeah.
I know. I was bummed.
It's like, I wish the guy had that training.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, dude. Really? Like you're running for office and you're going to take that risk? Come on.
Yeah, I was going to say, welcome to humanity waking itself up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's ham-handed.
But the experience I had
the diversity training,
the details of all the things I should and shouldn't say.
Yeah, for sure.
Or like, don't ask them their age, whatever you do. and the degree to which then I'm policing myself and I'm defending against the possible complaint that somebody might file, and the way that that begins to create a legalistic kind of a interference pattern in my relationship with other people. I felt the same thing that the Trump voters are feeling. Like,
Yes.
I agree with all the values they were trying to help make me sensitive to, and yet the enforcement of it and the codes and the details and how many more things you have to be aware of if you're in California because the laws are stricter and the whole deal. The fact that people
I'm always getting called out. I get called out. I haven't been canceled, but I get called out. I get called out the other day on a call I was doing.
Really? How so?
Yeah.
What were you called out for?
Well, it's tricky. I'd rather not talk about it. If we weren't recording, I would totally talk about it.
Yeah.
But basically, my response has been to go, okay, all right, sorry. Okay, where were we?
Uh-huh.
That's how I do it.
That's probably not
really?
quite good enough.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Sorry. All right, next.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are getting tired of that too.
Yeah, but I see that as it's, again, welcome to humanity evolving. I mean, there's that, there's the checking of that, there's the checking of the checking, there's everybody's online, we can't stay out of each other's hair.
I loved Terry's image of diversity in a can. Did you say it was diversity training in a can?
Well, yeah, it was just, it's a module, and you've got to spend at least 2 hours.
I used to do that. I used to do that in my 30s. I was the one up there scolding people. I was like ahead of the curve. I'm like,
yeah, me too.
You people shape up.
I know. And plus, I got processed at Naropa, as I assume you did too, with my white privilege. And like even some of the encounter sessions of sitting in a hot tub and, let's all say what's wrong with Jeff, and that kind of shit. All of it's ham-handed, but so was learning my catechism, where Jesus and the God and the number of angels on the head of a pin and all that shit.
Yeah, it's just what we do.
But there's this esoteric transmission to all of it that is, it's happening. And so these people go to these diversity trainings, and even if they hate it, they get, there's something that's been sort of peeled away.
Yeah, it's really true.
Hey,
you guys, I have to sign off. I have to sign off now.
Oh, okay.
I have to be somewhere at 6. I'm sorry.
Yeah, all good.
Okay.
Well, how lovely to be in your presence, Di.
It's great to be with you guys. I love talking to you both.
We gathered 4 years ago at the beginning of the Trump era, and we're gathering here at what we hope is the beginning of the end of the Trump era.
So my question is, why has nothing come through? I thought Nevada and Arizona were supposed to give us info today. What's going on?
We're literally, as we are recording this, waiting to hear. I just really want him to be out of the White House. I want him to be out of my head.
You guys, what are we going to do for this 2 months that he's still there?
I endure it.
2.5.
Yeah.
He's got the nuclear codes.
But he doesn't really do much. He just likes to watch TV and plot and.
Yeah, there's a lot of theater to Trump. I can endure 2 more months.
He'll be buying up a network and mobilizing.
He'll be moving on.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what horrified me, you guys? I feel this way, but like the idea of his entire family in the White House for another 4 years.
I know.
That was just like, was unbearable to me.
I know.
The nepotism and the.
Yeah. Don Jr.
No.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I know.
I love you guys.
Outside my circle of moral compassion.
And Terry, I really appreciate you, really. Because I walk around every day feeling that way. The temperatures in Salt Lake are absurd. It's November and it's 75.
Yeah, same here in Boulder. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Bye, loves.
Bye, loves.
So long, dears.
See you later.